Have you ever walked away from a conversation, not knowing why you felt completely drained? No one insulted you. There was no argument. The other person even smiled and talked like everything was fine. And yet, somehow, it felt like someone had just pulled a part of your energy away, as if you had to hold yourself together too tightly just to keep the conversation okay. Maybe it wasn't just a coincidence. Maybe it was the first sign. We live in a world where most people don't have the courage to say, "I don't like you." Instead, they smile. They're polite. They interact with you as if everything is normal. But inside, a quiet distance has already formed, and it grows bigger over time. And if you're not alert enough to notice it early, you'll keep giving your energy, keep staying, keep trying, while the other person has already stepped away from the relationship long ago, at least in their heart. The truth is, not everyone dares to dislike you openly. Not everyone dares to leave clearly. Not everyone is honest enough to look you in the eye and say, "I don't want to be around you anymore." What hurts the most is not open rejection, but a relationship that looks intact, but is hollow inside. It confuses you. It makes you question yourself. It keeps you holding on because you think, maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe they're just a little distant. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. And in all those maybes, you slowly lose your clarity. If you've ever felt that way, this video isn't here to help you blame anyone. It's not a place to gather doubts and conclude everyone's fake. No. This video is a reminder that if something inside you doesn't feel right, you need to listen to it, because the body doesn't lie, and your intuition often arrives before your logic catches up. I want to walk you through 7 signs, not so you can judge people, but so you can recognize situations that may seem normal, but are actually quiet warning bells. Recognize feelings you've tried to dismiss just because you were afraid of being called weak. Recognize relationships you've been holding on to simply because you've already invested so much. Your time, your emotions, your trust. I know there are people you don't want to believe are drifting away. There are people you don't want to admit. They don't care for me the way they used to. There are people you think, if I try hard enough, long enough, patiently enough, maybe things will return to how they were. But are you trading pieces of yourself just to keep something that's already broken? Stoicism doesn't teach us how to make people like us. It teaches us how to stay clear, even when we realize the other person no longer wants to walk the same road. It doesn't teach us to be cold. It teaches us to be awake enough to know when it's time to step away. And for that, the first step is to dare to look directly at signs that are hard to face. You may be getting hurt. Not loudly, not directly, but subtly, silently, and repeatedly. You may be placed beneath someone while they laugh and call it just teasing. You may be quietly excluded, explained away as just a mistake. You may be compared, belittled, brushed off in the form of strange compliments. And if you don't see it soon, there may come a day when you no longer recognize yourself. You'll become Kita, not because you've matured, but because you're tired. You'll start tiptoeing through relationships, still trying to seem friendly. You'll start asking, "Am I expecting too much?" instead of asking, "Am I being disrespected?" The truth is, someone doesn't need to hate you, to hurt you. They just need to stop being honest with you. And if you don't have the courage to walk away, you'll keep being the one who suffers until you no longer feel anything about the life around you. I'm not here to tell you to leave anyone. I'm here to ask you one question. When was the last time you felt respected? When was the last time you walked away from a relationship, a conversation, a group of people, and felt lighter? When was the last time you laughed, not because it was polite, but because you truly felt connected. If it takes you too long to answer, maybe it's time you started listening to yourself again and realize you don't need someone to hurt you more. Before you're allowed to leave, we're about to go deeper into each of the 7 signs, not to pick others apart, but to look inward and ask, have I been silent too long about things I shouldn't have stayed silent about? If you're ready, I'll continue. If not, I'm still here, because those who are awake enough to listen to the truth are often the ones who have endured the most. There's a kind of relationship that doesn't hurt you with punches. It wears you down with vagueness. Nothing is clear. Nothing is openly negative. Nothing breaks in a dramatic way. And yet, you always feel that something is off, but never enough proof to name it. They still interact with you, still talk to you, still reply to messages, but you feel more and more like a leftover. No one says you're wrong. No one blames you. No one officially ends the connection. They just simply aren't sincere with you anymore. They gradually become busy. They gradually forget to include you in plans. They gradually stop telling you about important things. Everything continues on, but you're no longer invited to the center of it. What hurts isn't rejection. It's the slow, quiet way you become invisible. You can't blame anyone. You don't want to make a scene, because technically, everything still looks fine. Only you are the one who feels that something's not right. I call these kinds of relationships fake kindness. It might sound harsh, but the truth is, we encounter people like this more often than we realize. People who don't mean harm, but are no longer real with you. People who are polite, but not genuine. People who do nothing wrong, but whose presence slowly makes you doubt your own worth. You begin to respond slower in conversations, not because you lack intelligence, but because you're carefully calculating, if I say this, will they look down on me? You start avoiding interactions, not because you're angry, but because each time you talk, you have to put on a pleasant version of yourself, a smile that isn't real. You start becoming more silent, not because you've matured, but because you're afraid of being judged, teased, or told you're making a big deal. And that's when you need to pause, not to end the relationship, but to be honest with yourself. Stoicism doesn't teach you to cut people off. It reminds you that peace is not something others give you. It's something you must protect for yourself. If a relationship is quietly draining you, if you're always guessing what the other person really thinks, if you constantly feel like you need to try harder to be loved, then maybe you're in the wrong place. I'm not saying you should walk away immediately, but you need to step back, just a little, so you can see clearly. Is this connection giving you energy or slowly taking it away, day by day? There are relationships that feel light, naturally. You don't need to impress. You don't need to second-guess your words. You don't need to reread your messages 3 times before hitting send. You just get to be yourself and still feel respected. But there are also relationships that make you careful. You don't know when it started, but you find yourself talking less. You find yourself feeling not good enough. You find yourself holding back the truth because you fear being judged. These relationships aren't always toxic, but if you let them continue without checking in, you might lose yourself without noticing. You may think, if I change, maybe the relationship will get better. If I speak more gently, act more pleasantly, open up more, maybe things will go back to how they were. But the truth is, if someone's no longer real with you, then all your efforts will only take you further away from your real self. The hardest thing isn't ending a bad relationship. The hardest thing is admitting that a relationship that used to be good is no longer the same. We tend to hold on to someone's past image, and stay connected because of that memory. We hope they'll come back to how they were. We think what we had before is enough to carry what's slowly fading now. But a connection that isn't nurtured can't stay warm forever. Maybe you've done a lot, but they no longer want to receive it. Maybe you've walked far, but they're still standing still. Or, worse, walking in the opposite direction. And if you don't pause, you'll keep pulling a one-sided relationship filled with hope, but no response. Ask yourself, have you recently felt like you're holding yourself together around them? Do their compliments make you feel smaller instead of lifted? Do you find yourself becoming more quiet, guarded, or careful in ways that don't feel natural? If yes, don't brush it off. Don't explain it away with, everyone's busy. Maybe I'm overthinking. Let's just keep things peaceful. You weren't born to keep the peace. You were born to live, truthfully, clearly, and freely. Stoicism doesn't ask you to withdraw from the world, but it reminds you, a mind that has to split itself in two will never stay calm for long. You need clarity to see the truth. You need courage to face the truth. And you need deep silence to hear what your inner voice has been trying to say. I'm not here to teach you how to end a relationship. I'm here to help you begin something even more important, asking the right questions, because sometimes what saves you isn't someone showing up to rescue you. It's that quiet moment when you ask yourself, clearly, why am I still staying? And whatever I'm staying for, is it still staying with me? There's a kind of pain that leaves no visible mark. No one yells at you. No one insults you. In fact, no one even says anything clearly. And yet, you still feel hurt. It's the kind of pain you feel when you start to shrink inside a relationship you once thought was safe. You find yourself carefully choosing every word, watching every action, suppressing your feelings, silencing your thoughts, just to hold on to a connection you once believed was intimate. But the more you try to hold it, the more it slips away. Let me share 3 short stories with you. They're not dramatic, not tragic, but they're very real. A friend once told me she had a close group of college friends. They still hung out, texted, interacted, but recently she began to notice almost every meetup happened without her. When she asked why, they said, "We thought you were busy." When she tried to rearrange her schedule to join, everyone had already made other plans. At first, she comforted herself. Life gets busy. But one day, she saw a photo they posted. A small gathering with all the familiar faces, except hers. No one told her. No one explained. No one apologized. It wasn't betrayal. It was forgetting. On purpose, she stayed silent. But inside, there was a cut. Not because she needed to be at the party, but because she realized she was no longer on their minds. Another story came from a younger co-worker in his team. He was always the energetic one, offering ideas, stepping up, but every time he spoke, there was always one person who would joke, "There he goes again with another wild idea." The group would laugh. The first time, he laughed too. The second time, he felt uneasy. The third time, went Keat. He told me, "I'm not afraid of being criticized. I'm afraid of subtle mockery. It makes me not want to speak at all." To be fair, the person teasing him didn't say anything obviously wrong. It was just a joke, a smile, a way to lighten the mood. But if you've ever been on the receiving end of that again and again, you know it's not a joke. It's a form of psychological control, carefully hidden. Mockery doesn't always come in the shape of anger. Sometimes it's wrapped in a soft smile and quiet words, and the one on the receiving end slowly curls inward, like a hedgehog too tired to raise its spines. The third story is something I witnessed in an old classroom. One student was always described as hard-working, diligent, followed by a bit slow. But still, do you see anything wrong? Maybe not. But when someone is constantly praised with phrases like, "You did great," "For someone like you," "Not bad," "Considering where you're at," "I'm surprised you managed that much," that's no longer praise. That's disguised condescension. And the most painful part, the person being praised has to smile and accept it. Because if they react, people will say, "You can't even take a compliment." If they feel uncomfortable, others say, "You're too sensitive. I was just being nice." That's when you begin to doubt yourself. Not because you're lacking, but because you're being manipulated through calculated sweetness. Stoicism teaches us to separate what is true from what is only surface, not to attack others, but to avoid being fooled by pleasant feelings that mask harm. There are people who will treat you nicely to maintain their image. They don't want to hurt you, but they don't genuinely value you either. And if you're not clear-minded, you'll get caught in the illusion, "I'm still liked." But the truth is, someone who truly cares will make you feel seen, heard, and supported. Someone pretending will make you feel like you have to try harder to deserve their kindness. The difference is in how you feel after spending time with them. Do you feel lighter or heavier? Do you feel more like yourself? Or like you have to change just to be accepted? You have the right to question. If every time you meet someone, you have to play a different role, you have the right to wonder. If their compliments feel more like comparisons, you have the right to step back. If that relationship is making you feel not good enough, that's not weakness. It's the sign of someone growing with awareness. You don't have to become suspicious of everyone. Just don't stay blind. You don't have to cut people off completely. Just learn to see which relationships are worth nurturing and which ones need distance. Because the truth is, it's not only those who leave who hurt you. Some stay. But their coldness, their fakeness, their silent distance can wound you just as deeply. I didn't write this for you to judge anyone. I wrote it so you would pause and look within. Could it be that someone is treating you like you don't really matter? Could it be you've been accepting sweet but manipulative words just to avoid upsetting the relationship? Could it be you've been holding on to something that stopped holding on to you long ago? You don't need the answer right now. You just need to stop ignoring the question. Stoicism doesn't say, "Leave." Stoicism simply asks, "Is this still right for you?" There's a kind of hurt that's hard to name. It doesn't come from harsh words. It doesn't come from cruel actions. It comes from something that sounds reasonable. "I've just been busy." The friend you were once close with starts meeting you less. Conversations lose their warmth. The promise of, "Let's catch up soon," keeps getting delayed. First a week, then a month, then many months, and you begin to believe maybe they really are just busy. But then you see them checking in at a coffee shop with someone else. You see stories of their fun outings. You see them everywhere, except in the plan they made with you. And then you understand they're not too busy. They're just too busy for you. The story I want to share today came from a quiet conversation with someone who once confided in me. She said, "I used to have a best friend, more than a sister. We were inseparable from high school through college. We shared every little thing. Then we graduated, started working. I tried to keep the connection, but she drifted away. At first, it was just missed calls. Then came unanswered messages. Then came promises like, 'Let's talk next week,' that never became real. I started asking myself, did I do something wrong? Did I upset her somehow? I didn't want to lose the friendship, so I stayed patient. I kept texting. I kept reaching out, but it all felt one-sided. She was still polite, still replied, but she didn't start conversations, didn't ask me back. And how are you? And one day, she saw a post. Her friend was on a trip with a new group. What hurt wasn't the trip itself. It was the question, why did she still have time for others, but not for me? She asked me, should I keep trying? Should I hold on to this friendship? I don't want to make a fuss. I don't want to be the one left behind. But if this keeps going, I feel like I'm losing my self-respect. I didn't answer immediately. I asked her, are you holding on? For her, or for a memory of what you used to have? We often cling to relationships because we value the past, because there was once a time when that person meant everything to us. And we think, if we wait long enough, they'll come back. But the truth is, some people don't leave with a dramatic exit. They leave with indifference. They slowly pull their energy away. They let you stay connected by the thinnest thread of politeness. Stoicism teaches us to see things as they are, without dressing them up. Someone who's truly busy will still let you know. They'll say, I'm overwhelmed right now, but I value our friendship. Let's catch up next week. And when they can, they will come back. Someone who's pretending to be busy follows a pattern, always replying late, always having excuses, always delaying, but still showing up everywhere else. Just not with you. The hard part is, they're not doing anything wrong, so it's hard to blame them, hard to get angry, hard to end it. And that's when you get trapped in an emotional loop. Hope, disappointment, self-blame, and back to hope. It's a kind of unconscious manipulation, but the damage is real. You start feeling like you're asking too much. You tell yourself, everyone has their own life. You calm yourself. Maybe they just need space. But the more you do that, the more you lose the boundary between real friendship and a polite connection that's already fading. You don't need to demand to be prioritized, but you do need to ask, am I still in their circle of care? Friendship, or any relationship, needs reciprocity. If you're always the one initiating, always the one waiting, always the one hoping, while the other only responds out of courtesy, then it's no longer a connection. It's a one-sided relationship being kept alive by habit. There's a quote in Stoicism worth remembering. Don't cling to a failing body. You'll decay with it. Don't hold on to something that's falling apart. You'll rot with it. This applies not only to the body, but also to emotions and relationships. If someone is always busy, but still shows up for everyone else, then that's not an accident. It's not that you're asking too much. It's that you're placing yourself in the wrong space. The right kind of relationship won't make you prove your worth, won't make you wait endlessly, won't make you wonder, do they still want to stay in touch? The answer is often already there. You just haven't accepted it yet. We say we value the relationship, but if you're holding on to something that no longer exists, you're valuing an illusion. The girl in my story stopped texting, not because she was angry, but because she didn't want to keep playing the role of someone who still cared, for someone who didn't need it anymore. She told me, I realized, silence is also a way to protect my dignity. It's not cutting someone off. End of 4. It's not ending the friendship. It's simply no longer holding on to something that's no longer real. That's a sign of awakening. You don't need to end things in anger. You just need to end them with this thought. I will no longer hurt myself by staying. Some people leave your life, not because they're bad, but because their role in your story is complete. Your only task is to bravely close that chapter. So you don't carry around half-hearted friendships. So you don't become the person who's always put on hold. So you remember this. You deserve a connection that needs no excuse, to show up fully for you. Not everyone is brave enough to openly dislike you. Not everyone is honest enough to say they no longer want you around. Most people choose to pretend. Pretend everything is fine. Pretend they still care about you. Pretend they still maintain the relationship, but at just enough distance, so there's no longer any emotional obligation. And if you're not clear-minded enough to distinguish truth from politeness, you'll get stuck in a relationship of fake kindness. It doesn't hurt you immediately. It slowly drains you, bit by bit. Drains your trust, drains your connection, drains your sense of self. I call it a hidden side, because it's not obvious. There are no harsh words, no betrayal, just small behaviors that, when pieced together, paint a very clear picture. They often joke about your weaknesses, never your strengths, never what you do well, just poking at what you're most insecure about, and they laugh it off. I'm just kidding. They compliment you in a way that makes you feel smaller. This result is decent, surprising. Given your ability, the praise isn't sincere. It's not meant to lift you. Their goal is to keep you in a lower position, while still getting credit for being nice. They exclude you from important plans, and when you ask, they say, "We thought you were busy," or "We figured you wouldn't be interested." But in truth, it's just a polite way of saying, you're no longer considered important. They're always busy with you, but somehow they have time for everyone else. You've become the last person on their list, and you start learning how to wait until they're free, as if it's normal. They avoid close contact. No hugs, no touch, no lingering eye contact, no warm presence. Just enough interaction to avoid seeming cold. They disappear when you need support. When you're struggling, sick, or going through something, they go quiet. They make excuses. They say, "I'll check in later," but never do. They speak badly about you behind your back, but act polite in front of you. You can't catch them directly, but you start hearing whispers, small leaks. You sense a disconnect between what they say to your face and what they say to others. None of these things are huge on their own, but when they add up, they create a toxic form of interaction. Politeness on the surface, but a lack of sincerity underneath. And the most painful part is this: the one being hurt still tries to keep the peace. They don't speak up. They don't cut ties. They just retreat quietly and keep questioning themselves. Am I just too sensitive? Stoicism doesn't teach you to be sensitive. Stoicism teaches you to discern between personal emotion and objective reality, to discern between kindness and pity, to discern between sincerity and performance. A person who truly cares doesn't need to joke to assert power. They don't need to put you down to feel higher. They don't disappear when you need them, only to return with vague apologies. Someone who truly cares won't leave you doubting your worth after every interaction. I know, you might have thought, I shouldn't make a big deal. They probably didn't mean it. Maybe I just need to be more understanding. But understanding doesn't mean closing your eyes to the truth. A simple truth. You deserve to be treated with clear respect, not ambiguity, not halfway, not with politeness that masks growing distance. You need to ask yourself, why am I still holding on to a relationship that makes me feel small? Why am I still staying in an emotional space where I always feel not good enough? Why am I the one still reaching out, keeping in touch, trying to hold the connection when the other person doesn't respond in kind? Maybe you're afraid to lose someone who once mattered. Maybe you're afraid of misunderstanding the situation. Maybe you're afraid of being alone. But Stoicism reminds you of something even more important. Loneliness in the wrong relationship hurts more than being alone by yourself. You're not lonely because no one is around. You're lonely because someone is around but you no longer feel like yourself. You're not the one causing the rupture. You're simply listening to the cracks that have long existed. You're not being judgmental. You're just pausing to ask whether what you're holding on to is still worth holding. You're not overreacting. You're just being honest with yourself, that you no longer want to be in a relationship where you must constantly fight to be accepted. There's a kind of peace that doesn't come from being liked by everyone, but from not needing anyone to pretend anymore. You don't need everyone's agreement. You just need a space where you no longer question your worth every single day. How many times have you walked away from a conversation and wondered, am I overreacting? Am I being too sensitive? Maybe. I'm the one with the problem. Self-doubt doesn't always come from within. Often, it's the result of being in the wrong relationships. Relationships that make you apologize for feeling hurt, make you shrink, even when you're the one being mistreated, make you second-guess yourself. After receiving some strange backhanded compliment, this is when you need to be reminded, clearly, firmly, with no hesitation. You're not wrong for feeling the need to be respected. You're not asking too much. When you want a relationship that goes both ways, you're not selfish for wanting genuine kindness, not just surface-level politeness. You're not overly sensitive. When you sense mockery behind a joke, you're not fragile. Just because you don't want to be excluded by someone who once mattered deeply to you, the only thing you need is the clarity to face your own feelings. If every time you see that person, you feel yourself shrinking, that's not a coincidence. If after each conversation, you feel emotionally drained, that's not because you're weak. If their compliments leave you feeling insecure, it's not because you lack confidence, it's because something in the relationship has stopped being healthy. Stoicism doesn't teach you to react impulsively. It teaches you to observe objectively, without denying how you feel, to analyze rationally, without silencing the quiet voice of your intuition. You don't need to shout that you're being mistreated. You just need to stop accepting it as normal. You don't need to accuse anyone, but you need to rise from a table where you're no longer being invited. You don't need to place blame, but you need to release yourself from a relationship that's slowly eroding your self-worth. Don't let sweet words, with no consistency, blur your judgment. Don't let half-hearted presence make you believe you still matter to them. Don't let harmless jokes make you forget. You have the right to be respected. If someone keeps hurting you in the same way, even after you've spoken up, explained, and shared, that's no longer accidental. That's a choice. And if you continue to stay, you're validating it. You're allowing it. You're telling yourself, maybe I don't deserve better. But the truth is, you do deserve better. You deserve a relationship that makes you feel spacious inside, where you don't have to wear a mask, where you don't need to reread your texts 3 times before sending, where you don't have to overthink every word you say, where you can be silent and still be understood, where you can speak your truth and not be mocked. You're not wrong for wanting to be heard fully. You're not wrong for wanting to be clearly included in someone's life. You're not wrong for desiring depth in a relationship, not just a beautiful appearance. If someone tells you you're being too picky, remember this: respect isn't a high standard. It's the bare minimum. You're not here to please everyone. You're not obligated to maintain relationships that drain you, just to act mature. Maturity doesn't mean staying silent forever. Maturity means knowing what to hold on to and what to release. It means recognizing that not all endings need conflict, but they do require honesty. Honesty with yourself. That says, I don't want to keep pretending everything's fine in this relationship. That says, I'm tired and I need clarity, not polite ambiguity. That says, I'm grown enough now. I don't need someone else to validate my worth. You don't need to become someone skilled at enduring pain. You just need to become someone who lives in alignment with their own truth. No one has the right to make you feel small, not even through humor, compliments, or friendly sarcasm. And if someone keeps crossing that line, you don't need to keep enduring it. You need boundaries. You need limits. You need to step away, even silently, but decisively. Don't let time prolong the wrong relationship. The longer it drags on, the harder it becomes to tell what's real from what's fake. The longer it lasts, the easier it is to forget what normal even feels like. The longer it continues, the more you grow used to being disregarded and start to believe it's natural. But you're listening to this video, you still feel, you still question, which means you haven't gone numb. You still have the chance to choose differently. Choose not to keep playing a role. Choose to walk away from a space that no longer nurtures anything good in you. Sometimes, the strongest action isn't speaking out. It's walking away, quietly, and not looking back. You don't need anyone to apologize. You don't need anyone to admit what happened. You don't need anyone to give you a late, half-hearted, "I still care." You just need to know one thing. You're not wrong for wanting to live in a relationship that is real. When you start to realize that someone is no longer sincere with you, your first reaction is usually sadness. Then comes self-blame. Then the longing. If only they had been honest. If only they had treated me differently. But if you're patient enough not to react right away, if you're brave enough not to rush into confrontation, if you're calm enough not to sink into judgment, you'll start to see something else, something strange. That the fracture, it's not just a loss. It's also an invitation. An invitation to come back to yourself. In the wrong relationships, we often become a version that's always trying to be more gentle, trying to be more agreeable, trying to be funny, open, easy to be around, trying to please, trying to stay quiet at the right time, trying to understand the other person, even when they don't try to understand us. But the more we try, the further we drift from ourselves. We start to lose track of what's real and what's performative. We can't tell if we're forcing ourselves or if we've simply gotten used to the force. And when that person begins to pull away, by being busy, by becoming distant, by offering polite but hollow words, we don't feel relief. We feel lost, because we've gotten used to living around them, used to measuring our worth by how they treated us, used to their presence as a confirmation that we're not alone. But Stoicism doesn't define you through someone else's gaze. Stoicism brings you back to a single question: who are you? When no one is looking at you anymore, when no one is complimenting you, when no one checks in, when no one replies to your messages, when no one is waiting for you to walk into the room, can you still hold on to your value? Can you still recognize your boundaries? Can you still tell what brings peace and what's tearing you apart, piece by piece? Awakening doesn't happen when you find the right person. It happens when you're brave enough to let go of the wrong one without needing anyone to tell you you're doing the right thing. You don't need someone to admit they hurt you. You just need to touch that wound and stop letting anyone touch it again. You don't need an apology. You just need to stop apologizing to yourself for staying silent too long. You don't need them to come back. You just need to come back to the part of you that's been waiting to be protected. Sometimes, when a relationship ends, it's not a loss. It's the return of a space you once abandoned. A space where you can finally look inward and ask, what did I lose in trying so hard to keep someone in my life? How many times did I forgive just to avoid being alone? How many small things did I tolerate that added up to a clear lack of respect? Stoicism doesn't make you stronger by closing your heart. It makes you brighter By opening your eyes to see clearly who's treating you with genuine care, who's keeping you around just for convenience, who compliments you just to keep the surface smooth, and who actually wants to know you, not to change you, but to be with you just as you are. You may discover that there aren't many people like that, but that's also when you realize you don't need many, you just need the right ones. The right people, the right distance, the right frequency, the right truth. And to be right with yourself, don't rush to blame the person who left. Don't blame yourself for staying too long. Look at it all as a lesson to remember. Not everyone who's polite to you is genuine. Not everyone who smiles and laughs with you sees you as important. Not everyone who stays in touch still holds real affection. And you don't need to be angry. You just need to be clear. Clear enough to let go. Clear enough to stop taking one more step toward what no longer calls your name with respect. You might feel lonely for a while after this road, but it's a necessary loneliness to help you get to know yourself again. Before you want someone to be real with you, you need to be real with yourself first. You need to relearn how to live, not to impress. Relearn how to speak without hiding your deepest truths. Relearn how to show up without feeling like you're too much. And you need to relearn how to say no with a smile, because not every invitation should be accepted. Not every relationship should be kept. Not everyone who was once important needs to walk with you forever. When you return, you'll see you haven't lost anyone. You've simply gathered back the parts of yourself that were left behind, just to feel seen. You've stayed until the very end. Not because you want to blame someone, not because you're looking for proof to leave a person behind. I believe you stayed because you're tired. Tired of always being the understanding one. Tired of staying gentle with things that feel anything but light. Tired of holding on to relationships you're no longer sure you belong in. And if that's true, I just want to say something small, something you don't need to force yourself to believe. Just listen and let it sit there, like a seed. You don't need someone to treat you badly in obvious ways to finally give yourself permission to leave. Some things don't have to explode to be painful. Some relationships don't need to officially end. They've been over for a long time. Some words don't have to be spoken. You've already heard them clearly through your intuition. We're taught how to endure, how to tolerate, how to hold on to old love. But no one teaches us how to recognize when it's time to let go, when something has quietly reached its final limit, when a relationship has stopped, long before the appearances did. Stoicism doesn't give you the answers. It simply asks the questions and waits for you to be honest. Do you still feel respected in that relationship? Can you still be yourself when you're around that person? Do you still feel a sense of peace when you think about their presence in your life? If you have to pause before answering any of those questions, then maybe you already know the answer. You just haven't said it out loud yet. And I understand. We've all tried to hold on, not because the love wasn't enough, but because we weren't ready to face the emptiness that follows. We stay, not because we still believe, but because we fear loneliness more than we trust ourselves. We stay silent, not to break someone's image. Even though we've been broken inside for a long time, we keep smiling, even when all we want is to walk away. But you don't have to do that anymore. You've heard enough. You've felt enough. And if you're honest with yourself, you know, you don't need to keep enduring just to hold on to something that's no longer worthy. From this moment, I'm not asking you to make a rushed decision. I just hope you dare to look back, a look that holds no bitterness, no anger, no accusations, just the kind of look of someone who's finally clear enough to know. No one is worth shrinking yourself for. No one has the right to repeatedly make you question your worth. And no one deserves to be kept if they've already left you in their heart. You don't need to shout. You don't need to explain. You just need to be silent. The kind of silence that comes when you've truly seen, and walk away. The kind of walk that doesn't need goodbyes. Healing doesn't happen overnight, but it begins. The moment you stop justifying what hurts you, it begins. When you choose yourself over keeping the peace, it begins. When you start saying no to shallow hugs, empty praise, and relationships that feel like take it or leave it. You weren't born to be someone's backup plan. You weren't born to be the background for someone else's spotlight. You weren't born to silently carry emotional starvation while trying your best behind the scenes. You were born to be seen, fully, to be loved, without having to become a version of someone else. To be present in someone's life as a real person, not just a pleasing character. If you were never treated that way, take that right back. Take back the right you gave others to make you feel invisible. Take back the right to be treated like an option. Take back the right to be hurt. Followed by, it was just a joke. You're no longer there. Not because you're angry, but because you've outgrown that place. Stoicism doesn't make you cold. It makes you clear, clear enough. You don't need to prove anything anymore. If someone wants to leave, you open the door. If someone wants to stay, you look at how they treat you, not just what they say. If someone is in between, you step back, so they can either show up clearly or disappear. You don't need many people. You just need to be clear enough, not to keep the wrong ones. And if you're starting that journey, I hope you walk steady, even if no one is walking with you yet, even if no new person has come in, even if things around you feel empty. You are not alone, as long as you still have yourself. A truly clear person doesn't need others to keep them. They keep themselves from places where there is no light left. If someone is slowly walking out of your life, let them go. No anger, no regret, because with every step they take away, you are getting closer to your real peace. You've just walked a long path, not to see others more clearly, but to see yourself just a little more clearly. If anything I've shared here has touched something in you, keep it. No rush. Just keep it. One day, when you're standing before a relationship that is no longer whole, you'll remember, I don't need to stay, just to keep things smooth. I need to leave, to keep myself whole. If we're meant to meet again, it'll be on another path, one that's more peaceful, more honest, and still enough that you'll never need someone else to validate your worth again.